Well, good evening. You are listening to Dr. Margaret and Reverend Katie Speaks on the Soma Fusion Media Radio Network. And tonight we are going to be talking about what it means to sacrifice, or what sacrifice means. Now, we can look at it as that all of us can look at our lives and count the times that we thought that we had made a sacrifice, that is giving up our personal desires to meet the needs of others. Now, if I take Ralph Waldo Emerson as an example, in his powerful essay, Spiritual Laws, he made what seems like an outrageous statement. If in the hours of clear reason, we should speak the severest truth, and we should say that we never had made a sacrifice, end quote. He prefaces the assertion with two conditions: clear reason and severest truth. Nonetheless, the claim for its validity still seems out of bounds. Now, all of us can look at our lives and count the times that we thought that we needed to or had to make a sacrifice. That is, giving up our personal desires to meet the needs of others. Isn't that what sacrifice means? How about the first responders who give up their lives to save others? Isn't that sacrifice? How about the first responders who give up their lives to save, like, for instance, being a parent of a sick child who sacrifices, a parent will sacrifice their own happiness, or individuals who sacrifice their own personal lives to care for, so let's say, aged parents. But isn't this sacrifice? The dictionary meaning tells us that it is a noun. Sacrifice means the surrender or destruction of something prized or desirable for the sake of something considered as having higher or a more pressing claim. The key here is the phrase, a more pressing claim. And that is why I use the Emerson example, and why we can really get into what he's talking about as well. And of course, we're going into other areas that we can speak on. But in fact, we make this choice all the time without really thinking of it as a sacrifice. And we simply make a choice. And here's the key word, a choice, where we see a more pressing claim. But then that notion begs the question, what constitutes a more pressing claim? And of course, Emerson asks us, in the light of clear reason, to consider what a pressing claim really means. And what Emerson is after here is for us to see clearly what it means to make a choice to respond to a higher claim, and then to see clearly how we react to that choice with feelings of anger and resentment. And too often we hold on to that anger and resentment and direct it to what we consider its source, the higher claim. In this case, the sick child or the helpless parent. What gets lost here is the choice itself. The moment when we respond with compassion and love to that higher claim, perhaps giving up what we thought of as our personal comfort and happiness. And if you see it in this way, how can we know that we're doing the right thing to be a sacrifice? And deep down, in terms of what I'm using as an example of Emerson's rights, in clear light of reason, we know that the right thing is, and we make our choice accordingly. And just perhaps we can say then that we have never made a sacrifice. Life presents us with higher claims all the time. And when we respond with them in an open heart, no sacrifice is ever made. But if I look at it from a different perspective, although in truth, the term sacrifice is altogether meaningless, it does have meaning in the world. Like all things in the world, its meaning is temporary and will ultimately fade into the nothingness from which it came from, and there is no more use for it. Now, the real meaning here is a lesson. Like all lessons, it is an illusion, for in reality, there is nothing to learn. And yet, this illusion must be replaced by a corrective device, another illusion that replaces the first. So both can be, So both can finally disappear. Now, the first illusion which must be displaced before another thought system can take hold, and that is a sacrifice to give up the things of this world. But what could this be an illusion, since the world itself is nothing more than that? So we can take a whole different range of opinions and ways of looking at things. So what is really the real meaning of sacrifice? And what do you think of that, Margaret?
Well, number one, I'll have to be very honest with you. I don't know this person you're talking about. I'm ill-read of other people's works because my spirit guides told me when I was 4 years old and I'd learned to read, and I did read at 4, that I was not to read anyone about the things that I do. I had to keep it secret. So over the years, of course, they were protecting me, and I grew up. And then yet again, when I was older, they told me, you cannot follow anyone else's words, you must follow ours. So I never studied with anyone other than school and all the things that I has to study at courses and so on. But I was always able in some way to understand, you know, not from this man or from other people, but from my spirit guides, that really sacrifice goes right back to the days when it was believed that a life must be given in order for the gods to listen. So I kind of had that in my head, that I wanted to start there. With the fear and the anxiety and the worry and everything, never mind today's society, because it's very different. We've changed the words and the meanings of sacrifice. But if we go back to, you mentioned soldiers going to war and they're doing it for a country and for the world and for peace, there's still going to be that tremendous facing death piece of understanding that no matter what you're doing. So I wanted to pick up with the basics of fear. When you know, imagine that the high priest has come to you and told you you're going to be a maiden princess in the place somewhere trained, and you think, oh, this is good, and then after a while you find out that you're being trained so that you will go to your death on a certain moon or something planet at such a time, so that they will have good farmland next year, or they will have the blessings of God to tell them where to go, what to do. It's very, very basic. Can you imagine being under a death sentence like that and going joyfully to your death in horror, in fear, in anxiety, knowing that you've seen in the past other people being sacrificed, blood everywhere, or whatever it is in some way, and you're supposed to go joyfully? I really don't believe that anybody back in the ancient times went joyfully. Same with witches and warlocks and whatever they thought they were in those days, dumping them, drowning them, burning them. You know, we have got a very, very violent nature in us. So when I think about sacrifice, I think about that first, the negative side. So I would like to see what you say about that.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. That's why I kind of mentioned, you know, do we actually know the real meaning of sacrifice? And is it just an illusion? Because, of course, it takes a great learning to both realize and to accept the fact that the world really outside of ourselves has nothing to give but what we give meaning to it too. So, you know, just because you have less of it because of it, there is no sacrifice in the world in terms of it does not involve the body. And think a while, you know, about the, you know, how the world says it calls itself to sacrifice power, fame, money, physical pleasure. Who is the hero in it all? And who do these things actually belong to? And these are the kind of questions that I kind of raise. Like, could they mean anything except to a body? Or yet here we go. We can't evaluate a body to give it meaning, so that we can. So by the time that we actually seek after such things, we can only have our mind that associates itself, and therefore it obscures the identity of what actually really is. So the meaning of sacrifice kind of loses its way. It can't, but at the same time, sacrifice also gives us hope.
Well, Well, what I'd like to interject here is if we take the examples of people who've been sacrificed in our history, one of the most common aspects that comes up time and time again is someone, i.e. in the Bible, Ezekiel, or someone like that, and then we come forward more sages, more groups until we get Jesus. Then we got Siddhartha Buddha and all these different figures are at the top. And every one of the stories, even Muhammad, who did a lot of questioning about he did a lot of research on all the different books that are out and about at his time. And I think it was about 600 AD. Don't quote me exactly, but around that time. That was the first time, in my opinion, that I actually saw that someone was questioning the philosophy and theology. And that was a time, of course, in the Middle East was breaking out, Persia and all these areas were developing and evolving in some way. And there was a lot of violence in those days, wars amongst themselves for land or trading or whatever it was. And there was always someone that was picked to lead and die for the cause.
Yeah.
And I think that's the basic meaning of sacrifice, is to lose a life. And if we fast forward it to now, we obviously don't want to go and lose a life. You mentioned soldiers, and obviously that's a big thing. If they feel they want to serve the country, that's a mirror image of, say, the Romans or whatever, because we've carried that idea of sacrifice for the better good of others in our minds. But when you look back at all those people who've died, and there was somebody who was saying something about over the last number of wars, it was like millions and millions and 100,000 millions or something people all died in as top leaders going out there in the world, leading their man, doing something for the purpose of good mankind. But when you look at the period after the sacrifice, it's still bad. So what is sacrifice? So I asked my spirit guides many, many years ago, do they send people down with the purpose of being killed, sacrificed? And their response was, nobody sees it as a sacrifice because they know before they ever come into embodiment what time and when and how they'll die. They do know it, but it's hidden. It's in the deep subconscious here. So their motivation, their drive and ambition is not about saving the world. It's about teaching something, getting a point of view over to people that we need change. We need to appreciate one another, whatever. And every war that you look back and see, it was always about fighting off the violence with violence. Now, if we fast forward to now, in my opinion, we still fight the wars, but with one another verbally. And people emotionally blackmail us into doing whatever it is they want us to do. And that, to me, is a big sacrifice, because you're giving up who you are. Mm-hmm. You're becoming what someone else wants you to be. That's more but less the way I think about sacrifice these days. I don't analyze it too much, but carry on. What else did you want to say?
Well, what I'm saying, well, that's exactly why I said, is it an illusion? Because we're only so much of what we think we are. So we put thought to it. Of course, it's not going to translate. That's why I was just mentioning about the body and the mind connection, because is it an illusion? Because we think that we're going for the greater cause, and yet we're sacrificing ourselves. I mean, at the end of the day, life is pain and suffering, sporadically broken up with brief moments of pleasure. Some folks resist accepting that is true, but it has been said before, resistance is futile. And even asking too much or too much seeking of pleasure seems to bring pain and suffering. And once we see that existence and progress and prosperity, which is translated in simple terms in English, growth, and it is based on facing pain and suffering, even seeking it, as many people do and know, when we start to see the need for deliberate sacrifice. And
well, yeah, let me just interject there that we don't mentally, I don't think any of us mentally think okay, I have to do A, B, C. This is a big sacrifice. I think we're much more emotionally trained to say, put yourself last rather than put yourself first. And so it's only after we've gone through efforts, trials and tribulations of trying to give that we find out we've been misguided by our beliefs and abused by the people who are just taking and taking and taking until you find yourself at such a low level of awareness of self that you feel life is not worth living. And here, going back to your soldiers, you know, a lot of the people who joined up a while ago, and we were, well, they needed to not so much. I talked to a lot of people that I met, you know, I say a lot, a number of people who did serve. And it was quite a common thing to find out that they served because they wanted a career to be trained in something. Let's say they want to be a doctor, just because I happen to be one. And they get joined up and then they get put into the sort of training, running, climbing walls and doing everything. And next thing they know, they're being ordered, they have to go overseas and serve where the war is. And it's like, okay, I signed up, I have to go and I accept that. But that's where I think the sacrifice starts to come in, because there's a promise in some way by someone, an authority, an organized. It's like even right now in our country, in America, you know, president's promising everything, and every other president I've ever seen in this country has promised everything. And what happens as soon as they start to do, up comes a bunch of people who start saying, well, we don't want it this way, we want it that way, and you signed up for this job, so you have to listen to us, and you have to go here, and you have to do hither and thither. And the next thing you know, that person is locked down, has to perform in some way according to what the demand is. And it's only then, I think, that it hits them that they're in one big sacrificial situation and you can't get out.
Yeah. Well, this is where I was going to go with this. We could hypothesize that all significant progress came from people who decide that to sacrifice, to seek it, and many ended up helping many people to achieve it. We have an ease-seeking gene that seems, but my guess is that it's taught as an expectation. It's not genetically programmed in us. So if we were to go down that route, sacrifice is seeing a path to ease, pleasure, or pleasure, and deciding not to take the path, but rather turn away from that and choose pain and suffering to achieve a far more greater reward for ourselves, for others, in the present life and or future generations. And if going back to what you originally said, if we look back in history, we can clearly see that we now benefit from hundreds of thousands, millions of people's pain and suffering before us, which is exactly why when we are called to, let's just say, war, we think that it's there for the ultimate goal is for the betterment of society. But if we go into modern times, we can go into say, hey, our sacrifice is that we sit behind a computer screen and typing on a keyboard and reading a computer screen in safety. And so that is another sacrifice, because we're not sacrificing ourselves. We're not sacrificing, we might be in a family situation. We live with parents with children, and that by having them at home and sitting behind a computer, you're not actually putting yourself in harm's way. So there are different angles that we can take on. And so a lot of unlearned benefits have actually come our way, and many of these benefits came through sacrifice, and then we are actually reaping the rewards of that. So if we did not go to war, then we may not have had the certain policies or certain events happen, or they could have exacerbated. There's just like a coin, there's two sides to every single story. And if we continue to sacrifice for the future, or
They're treading on dangerous ground here because I can just see everybody want to argue about rebuilding the world and you know, they want it their way instead of our way and this and that. And that's human nature. We're like that.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is the question I pose here, will we continue to sacrifice for the future, or will I can't even speak English today, will we be unappreciative and lazy, think that we can coast and complain without contributing or sacrificing like those other millions did before us? Because we're not the only ones sacrificing here. Everybody sacrifices every single day, no matter what the situation or circumstance is.
Well, what I want to say here with that is you have to realize that through our DNA and through RNA that we learn and watch, and it doesn't matter whether it's movies or reality, we are trained to realize, put yourself last, as I said earlier, which leads into the sacrificial situation. And if we block it into religions, then we've got a whole bunch of rules and regulations, depending on the religion, in terms of you must be lowly, you must be receiving whatever it is, and you must follow in whatever way you're instructed, even if it causes you fear, pain, anger, guilt, which in my opinion often sends people spinning down through the mind into the heart, into acute depression. So I don't think of sacrifice the way you do, because you studied a more modern later period in time. But what I do think about sacrifice is that I remember, this is where I step into my past lives when I was with Jesus. He was used to say that he was frightened that the lion would gobble up the lamb. And that is symbolic of the Romans gobbling up the Jews. And we understood that, but it wasn't written in the text, see? So we have taken those kinds of consciousness as Christians, and other people have taken it in their religions and used it the way they want to. And if you go behind the symbolicism of what was written in many, many books, it always comes back to the strong versus the weak. And the weak think that if they serve the strong, and in the process of doing the strong call for more from them, then they have to give even more that they didn't expect to give. And that's when they become hooked into being in a state of sacrifice where they don't know how to say no. I know over my life, many times people will come to me and say something like, I really need help. I've got this and that. Drop what you're doing and do a reading for me now and heal me now. It's like, okay, well, I'm a bit busy right now. Okay. They make you feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as soon as you feel guilty, you start to think, well, maybe I could squeeze them in. Well, it's the same with any situation, wherever it is, not just mine, but anyone, where people will come up and load you with hopes and dreams, say what they want, and give you that little hook that draws you in. And you think, okay, it could be money, and you spend a bunch of money, and then you find out they've run off with your money and you haven't got any left. And now you're in the sacrificial space, because how are you going to feed the kids? How are you going to pay the bills? You know, so I want also to tie into sacrifice greed. So if I go back to what I was saying about the people who were trained in, you know, in the temples or whatever they were to be a sacrificial lamb, there is some part of that training that says you will be remembered for eons of time. Your name will go down in history. You are the most greatest thing since cream cheese. And they believe that because the attachment to I want to give and serve and so on is I want the acclaim. And that is a form of greed. Okay. I know with Jesus, he was always saying, I'm just the same as you, but they still put him on a pillar which led to his death. So that's the basic thing I think here that we need to look at is how people, in the hope of getting more, become the sacrificial lamb. Do you agree with me? Yeah. So how do we say no?
Yes, the other saying is too, is that, no pain, no gain, right? What is that? What is there to lose by sacrificing? I've done it's like karma. Two sides to every story, duality. We can go into karma. Karma has the same effect, the polarity of, well, if I give, then I can, get whatever the return may be, or, which is why I exactly say, no pain, no gain. Achievements only come to the one who deserves it. So, in terms
And how do you define who deserves it?
of a sacrifice, that's what I'm saying. Are we actually going down that route of how do we find something of value? And so that's why a lot of people are more inclined to sacrifice themselves for, like the betterment of humanity, or sacrifice themselves to save another life, or to sacrifice themselves. So it's kind of like this, it's the same thing repeated over and over again. It doesn't matter which way we look at it. Someone either loses a life, you lose something valuable, but in order to sacrifice for our loved ones, and given the fact that we have choice, is what we don't fully grasp. And that is why we can go down a path and just say yes, yes, yes to everything. I'm just going to put myself and sacrifice myself, put myself in harm's way in order to make something more valuable or more successful, or to make someone more loved, or I don't know. There's a whole
well, what's behind that is the way we think. And the way we think is the way we've been trained by our parents. So, my upbringing, being upper class, as they called it, and royalty history and all that stuff, I was told I was a leader. I didn't even know what a leader was. Someone who goes out and says, do what I tell you, which is what my father did all the time. I didn't like that. I didn't want to do what I was told to do. So I was a rebel really inside me. Now, I want to define here, if you don't mind, a little bit of how important it is the way we think about what we're going to do, and the end of the string, how we think it's going to work out. And sometimes we're okay, sometimes we get it, and the goodies arrive and everything's wonderful and we're praised, okay? But that's a teaser that leads us into wanting more. And the more we try, the more we struggle to get more, the lesson comes in. And from a spiritual point of view, no, you can't have it this time, is there to make us think, well, why did I want it in the first place? And why did I do all these things? And why did I sacrifice myself to the cause? And I will tell you, over the years, I've had many Catholics come to me who were emotionally blackmailing themselves to go to confession, because they felt if they didn't go, because they were taught at 5 years old when they were confirmed, and by the way, what does a child know at 5 years old? Promising to God, But if you don't go to confession, this is years ago before you were born, if you don't go to confession once a week, then you are a sinner. And if you're a sinner, you have to do your Hail Marys and Our Father and so on. And even still, go home, admit you were making a mistake, have everyone tell you off, and then make amends, like washing up for 2 months or cleaning your room out or something. And I actually asked some of my friends who were ardently pushed to Catholic school and church and confession, and mid-afternoon for kids, off they go to the church. So one day I said to these kids, I said, well, what do you say, when you go in that you sinned? What sin? And I said, oh, I don't know. And the other one said, oh, I lie. I said, what do you mean you lie? So I said, well, I just go in and say I pick my nose, or, it was real childish stuff because we were young. Pick my nose, or I tell them that I told my mum I hate her or something. And I'm like, but you're not like that. You never do that with your mom. Well, yeah, but you've got to say something bad. I can't say that I was a good boy or a good girl all week. I was shocked. I was stunned. And so one day I kept on questioning them, as why I'm keeping up the story. I said, did you lie? What happened? Oh, he gave me punishment and so on. And the girl who'd said that she told the priest that she said to her mother she hated her mother, actually was told to go to the mother and confess to the mother that she was wrong. And if she didn't do that, she would not be forgiven the next time she went. The priest actually said, until she told her mother that she was sorry for saying she hated her. She was in a quandary now because her mother, she never said that to her mother, lying. See? So there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on with people who are manipulators, who come into our lives and they tell us a story like the money I said earlier on here, or they tell us that, you know, something's going on at the hospital and you need to donate something because you might end up there next week and you won't get in first or something. You know, there's always someone that's pitching something that to the person receiving it thinks, I want praise, I want adulation, I want to be remembered as someone who has come here, done a good turn, and then I can go away and say, for the rest of my life, I can sit under my apple tree and say, God loves me because I sacrificed myself. Have you ever thought of it that way?
Yeah, and I was just had a thought. You know, we have to sacrifice our ideal of sacrifice. A rational or moral person always trades a lesser value for a greater one, and which is exactly what you just said. So, you know, routinely this is done, possibly choosing a merely, again, the choice, merely on the basis of the subjective preference. And so, but when more is at stake, there's something universally recognizable in the present. So, for instance, for those who are making sacrifice for the betterment of humanity, or let's just go a different route. If a parent chooses to sacrifice his or her life to save a child, the parent is choosing, and by his or her own standards and their own standards, the greater value. And if it's not true and the parent is only motivated by a sense of duty, or is still less desirably a concern for what people would think, I can sympathize for those who consider such an outcome unfortunate. But I don't think of the parent's choice as being particularly admirable. But it must be said here that if the child can be saved, as an example, at a lesser cost to the parent, this is better than a sacrifice, if only for the sake of the child.
Well, you know, but is it a sacrifice? Because I question that, because a mother's love, a father's love for that child will override any idea that they're making a sacrifice. And I'm going to give you an example of a person that actually didn't know anybody. There was a child dying with kidney issues, and there was a particular blood type that's rare and so on. And I happened to know this because I was working with the parents in terms of helping them get through all this. And they actually were praying a lot and asking God to help save their child and all this and that. And the child was on the list, but the chances of getting a kidney were out of the blue. Well, here's an example where they went to the church and the padre announced, or whatever he was, that this child needed a kidney. And unknown to anyone in the congregation, there was one man who had the same blood type. And without any doubt whatsoever, without anything, he came up to them as they were going out of the church and said, I can help your child, and gave his kidney. Now, I don't think that was a sacrifice. I think that was a spiritual feeling that that's what he came to do, and he needed to do it. But the parents, they were dealing with the idea that this man was giving up his kidney, and what the other one went wrong, then that would be a real sacrifice, and they didn't want to take his life away because that's the way they thought. And so they were actually really seriously thinking that they should not take his kidney. But the man insisted. He said, I'm an adult, I can make choices myself, but it's your child and I can't invade your space. But they agreed, and the child survived. So was that I don't think that was sacrificial. It looked like it from some of the parents and different people that were involved, but from the man's point of view, He just wanted to do a good thing and save a kid. And I don't know what happened to him, and I don't know where he went, but I admired that at the time, that someone out of the blue had no emotional contact with this family other than being at the church, to come forward and offer his help like that. And I want to be very careful when we mention soldiers join up. And I mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of them joined in years when you were a child or before, because we'd had a world war, we'd had, you know, Vietnam, all these different things. So, you know, we thought we weren't going to have any more wars. So, okay, it'd be good to sign up and get your education, and you can train to be whatever you want to be, only to find one more war and slipped overseas. So I don't think people join up with the idea that they're sacrificing their life. I think they join up with the idea that they're getting something. But as I said earlier, they get it, but it's not turning out to what they think. And I think a lot of people think and move on that without knowing the outcome. And the outcome can be the trial and tribulation that takes them into sacrifice.
Well, which is why I talk a lot about valuable. What is most valuable? The most valuable thing to be put onto the table, like a mother's love, you know, is a perfect example. But there's always going to be a personal cost. It has to be something usually it is meaningful. The loss must be personal. The sacrifice must be usually private and not public. The far more greater value put on the private nature of sacrifice. But at the end of the day, the sacrifice must also improve your moral, your physical, your intellectual, and or maybe spiritual health and well-being.
Let's take another angle on sacrifice, going back to the old days. Killing an animal and doing an altar business, which is better than killing a human. Okay, we evolved a bit. So now we're not killing humans so much, we're killing animals. We now kill cows 1 second. Bump, bump, bump. Okay. No religion, no philosophy, no nothing, just greed for food, for beef. Those animals are born to be sacrificed for us to eat. Now, of course, many people are saying, including me, I like meat. But why do we have to have a piece this big on our plate when all we need is a little bit like this? Why do we have to have so many cows force-fed to be fatter than they need to be, with the wrong antibiotics and all the things in there that we then eat that make us sick? So indirectly, I see animals being killed to help us survive, but we eat it and we sacrifice that animal and we get mean about it. We justify and we rationalize it. And I think if we learn that we don't need, you know, from the third world countries, example, they live on rice and maybe a piece slice of chicken this big, and vegetables and everything, which is good and healthy, once a day. Okay. And the plate would be about that big. That's all you get. And I know, because I've traveled all over the world, India and Japan and, you know, Mexico and wherever. And you don't have to have this enormous plate of food. Now, you may not realize this, but when you eat all that food, you are putting the energy of that food into your body. And if that food has come via people who've handled working all God-sent hours for few dollars or whatever it is in their country in a sacrificial mode for them to keep food on the table for their family, guess what's going in your body? Sacrificial energy from people you don't even know exist, because vegetables, meat absorb energy. Have you ever thought of that? Okay, so people don't think of that. They just, greed again comes up. Oh, I love that food, I love that flavor, but they don't think of where the stuff has come. And it's the same with, like, we buy furniture or whatever we buy, someone's slaving away in a third world country so that we can have it over here. And they get next to nothing for it. And then we go in and we get a sale. We think, oh, good, I've got something really good. We don't stop and say, I bless the person that made this. And may they have joy and pleasure instead of sacrificing in a sweatshop or something. So there's a lot of labor going on, people being forced to work for little money and maybe not even enough to buy food for a whole week. And we in the West take it and take it and take it. So as long as we have that sacrificial thing going on that gives us something through greed cheaper than if we got it here at home, okay, we're going to let them keep sacrificing. To stop sacrificing, it's part of the reason we're talking about it, is to teach people that you do not need to slave away in some sweatshop or wherever and serve somebody miles away in another country with your particular thing you've made. Okay, I've been listening to Spirit a lot over the last 10 years about where they've been talking about the coming of the Aquarian age and how the Piscean age has taught us to sacrifice, which is partly why you wanted to do it. And that the Aquarian age coming in is about communications, listening, sitting and seeing, touching and feeling, and understanding how much effort, time, toil, troubles, whatever has gone into the world now, coming into our consciousness to say, I'm not going to let anyone suffer that way anymore. And the only way it's going to be achieved, according to Spirit, is each country must rebuild themselves. Now that means trade isn't there anymore in terms of send something from Timbuktu all the way to, I don't know, India, just to say Timbuktu is in India, is in Ireland. You know, people are probably shouting me down right now saying, but we need trade and we need all these things. But hey, before trade came up like this, we only really shared things like material silk or things we don't have, worms making silk. Those things you can understand why we want more. But why do we have to price them up and price them up and price them up so the people at the bottom are barely making anything and everybody's feeding off it all the way up? So by the time it gets to us, you know, we've got the product and we're complaining because it's a bit more expensive than usual. Okay. So what do? Oh, I'll start my own company and I'll sell it cheaper and I'll make a sacrifice because I'll cut back on the price and I'll cut back on this and I'll cut back on that. And suddenly you're bankrupt. And now you're blaming the world that nobody understood what you were trying to do. And now you're miserable, you're distressed, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're worried. And everyone you turn to says, oh, I'm so sorry for you. Here's $1. It's like, what's that for? Well, we thought you were begging on the streets or something. You know, that's even more psychological destruction. And that's what we're looking at, the way we think. What do you think?
I was just going to, you took the words right out of my mouth. No, I was just going to say, you know, the more emphasis we put onto the sacrifice, which is exactly why a lot of us don't, especially if you're a giver, you know, to a fault, you are more inclined to sacrifice yourself, even if it makes you miserable. It doesn't matter how much you have or how little you have. You're still going to, if you're a giver, then you put yourself into that situation each and every single time, thinking that, okay, the more good I do, the better the world might become, or the better my family might become, or better my children might become. You sacrifice yourself without even knowing it on a daily basis. I know I do that to do exactly what I'm doing right now, building the Samaras Education Center. You know, but I know at the back of my mind that I'm doing it for a purpose, which is exactly what sacrifice is all about. You know, I know what the end gain is, or the end result will be. So therefore I strive to achieve what I set out to do, regardless of the consequences it has to my health, or you know, the sacrifices that I have to do, me being a single mom with 2 children. There are so many different ways of looking at sacrifice, but it doesn't mean that I don't love anybody and everything around me, or place lesser value on anybody that is connected to me, because as a whole, I'm still going to continue on doing what I do. But to the detriment of my own health and well-being, I put my foot down. See, back before, I would just say, yes, 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 I'm going to go do that, because it made me feel good for temporarily.
Mm.
I became exhausted. And then back to it, I was just like, no, 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 I can't do that. Why can't I do that? Because it's hurting me.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that they can change their point of view, because the way they look at circumstances, I'm trapped by this, 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 and they put it all in their head. And it only takes a counselor or someone to come in and say, well, let's take each thing one by one and look at it in a different angle, so that you can then say there's an alternative choice in the way, and you mentioned this choice earlier on, that you can do things. And if you're willing to make that choice, sometimes that choice means that the people you're integrating with are not good for you. So you need to break away and walk away. But if you can't, and it's your family, then it means that you have to have talks, or you have to sit down, like Spirit said, in the Aquarian age, and listen to the gripes and the frustrations that people are going through at the expression of your will. And there's a lot of people that don't realize that they are leaders who demand too much, and the people who follow them realize that they're giving a lot, but they don't want to step back, because they feel that if they do, they'll lose that leadership, or they'll lose whatever you're feeding them as tidbits to supposedly help them, but which has become a codependent situation. I've seen a lot of manipulation over the years of goodwill doers to people who have been negative and who have been manipulated in some way. And the bottom line is, when I'll give you one example. There was one lady who came and she wanted to give me some amber beads, and you know they're quite expensive because I'm into the stones. And I'm saying, no, 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 this is yours. She said, oh, no, this, I want you to have this. This is the 3rd one I've given away. I gave some to somebody and so on, told me the story. And that led to, because she was born and provided with some money, so she was reasonably well off by those standards in those days. And I can see her even now insisting that she has to go and buy something to do with alternative medicine and give it to someone who's depressed. And I said to her, well, how are you paying for all this? So she said, I have a trust, I have some money there. So I said, well, yeah, but that's for when you get older and, you know, whatever, and told her stuff. And she said, yes, but I'm going to die next year. And I said, what do you mean you're going to die next year? You're healthy, there's nothing wrong with you. And so on. She said, I just know that I'm going to die. Well, I'm happy to tell you she's very much still alive, because she's a little bit younger than me. And she was a church member. And since she's traveled all over the world, because we got her to understand she didn't need to give this money away. She felt guilty having the money. And so she used, giving it away was her sacrificial way. And eventually we got her to realize that she could travel, see the world. And boy, did she travel. So there's a joy in giving to self, but a lot of people feel guilty that they've got things. And that's what turns them around to wanting to be that sacrificial lamb and go out and give up all their worldly goods, like supposedly Jesus and Siddhartha Buddha did, and so on. That they would then be happy. But they weren't happy until they traveled, because everybody that they were giving to was just, can you give me a bit more? You know, or let's emotionally blackmail you in some way. Yeah, but she's still around.
Mhm.
Didn't die. So you see how the mind can twist thoughts and turn people to the negative and then add on it. It's like getting a basic brick of I'm the sacrificial lamb, and then piling more and more incidents on top, where you could say, I've been a good person, I've given all this away. And then you suddenly find you can't cope with your life anymore because you've got nothing left.
Which is exactly why it's equal give and take. That if it's not equal give and take, and you're giving and giving and giving, and you may not actually expect something in return, and that's not the point of what I'm trying to say, is the fact that you are miserable and you are down in the dumps. So therefore, the more you give away, the more it's just like a rich person. A rich person may have everything and they may give everything away, but they're still miserable at the end of the day. They're rich or not, it doesn't matter.
Well, also that, we all know that things, I don't want to talk about money, but things don't make us happy because they don't talk to us. They don't, you can put it on like a new dress and me showing my bra strap. And you can, put your money where your hopes and dreams are, and you can work away, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going down the right pathway. If, for example, years ago, a Japanese person, won't mention names, very famous lead one violin player, wanted to biggest orchestra in the world, and so on and so forth. And she came to me and she said, I don't want to be this. I don't want to do this. I never wanted to do this. My parents told me they're both musicians. I need to play. So I practice. And here I am, and I hate it. And I said, well, you could leave. And she said, oh, no, I can't because I let the whole orchestra down. I said, well, maybe you're giving the sub lead a chance to enjoy her life. Oh, I never thought of that. I thought of it as I didn't want to load her with the responsibility and the sacrifice that I've been through. So she was willing to stay in that situation, not to keep her ego up that I'm lead one, but to protect number two lead. Okay, so we had to go through that. And eventually I found out that she had sort of 24 hours a day, right? She had 18 hours a day playing. Can you imagine just doing that all day? And then you go and do a concert in the evening. She had nothing else. So she was a sacrificial lamb to the wishes of her parents. She really worked hard, got everything her parents wanted, and hated it. There's a lot of people who sacrifice themselves and wish they'd never done it. I wonder if there's anyone listening who wants to call in. We'd love to hear stories, wouldn't we?
Yeah, our call-in number is 929-436-2866 with the meeting ID number 522-657-2748. Again, I'm going to repeat that for those who
slowly writing it down.
436-2866 with the meeting ID number 522-657-2748. Call in and tell us what your thoughts on this topic tonight of sacrifice. For me, I sacrifice a lot of the times, and that it's only taken me a long time to realize, okay, well, I'm sacrificing my personal health for everybody else around me. But I beg to ask this question: whether sacrifice is partially, well, going back to what I originally said in the beginning, illusion. We can talk about illusion because illusion is made up in our minds. It's the preconception notation of what we think we are to believe is a good sacrifice for ourselves or for somebody else. How about we sacrifice ourselves because everybody else is doing it for the sake of conformity?
Of what?
Conformity.
Ooformity. What's ooformity?
Conformity.
Oh, conforming to things. Okay, I never thought of it that way. Well, while you were talking, I was thinking of like these people that bomb out buildings, or they're running with a gun, and a stranger just for no reason at all runs in front of someone else to protect them. There's an instinct of survival, but there's also an instinct in each of us to help others. It's always there. Why? Because when we're infants, our mother and father's helping us because we can't do anything on our own. So we naturally want to help others. If we are already negative and fearful of the world, then we're more likely to hold back and think, is this dangerous for me? But in given scenarios, i.e. war too, where the soldiers are out, men and women out there, and I take my hat off to them because it is a stressful job. I have dealt with many post-traumatic stress disorder scenarios with vets from way back, like my dad, to even currently, because it is stressful walking around like this all the time, wondering if looking up, looking down, looking around, you know, you're going to be shot to pieces by the end of the day with every little noise, because it may be someone, you know, with a gun or something. I think that kind of stress in the sacrificial lamb thing, I don't think they're feeling they're making a sacrifice so much as they're lost so much in what they have to do. It's only after something happens to them, like they lose an eye, arm, or God forbid, a life, the family comes forward, and that's when it hits the news that so many people have been wounded or killed. And what do? We say, oh, you know, we love them and we praise them and so on. But we are not doing what is right for them. We're not saying enough's enough. We don't want you to go over there and fight someone else's battle. We want you to stay home and enjoy this world here. We are lucky. We're in a country that is ahead of most of the world. There are other big countries, of course, we won't name them, but you know, why do they think they have to control all the other countries that are struggling? Well, the bottom line is that that part of us wants to help. But there's also that other part that wants to take over and lead them to a point away from what their core is. Now, if I bring that back into a family, it's the same when a couple gets married. You're all happy campers, and then we start trying to live together, and we find out, well, your ideas are way off the ball from mine. So we have to adapt. Now we're trying to adapt and fit in and changing. You know, this is like my symbol of every day of our life. There isn't 1 minute when this isn't going on with your brain. Okay, trying to make sense of what you see and what you hear and what you feel. And ultimately, I've done a lot of study with people, you know, obviously one-on-one and things like that over there. Ultimately, it always comes down to, I don't understand what this family of mine is doing. I want to step back and just pretend I'm not part of it. I'll work all God sent hours, so I'm not there while they're arguing or fighting or something. And I'll come home with the money and hope that will keep them all quiet, and they go out and spend it all, and then I'll go off and work again, and I'll work long hours. You're teaching people in your family to abuse you by making the excuse you need to work all those hours, when what we should be doing is teaching by a model how to do many different things, right? Because many different things give us a change of the way we think, a change of the way we see the world. And when we make several things, I remember the days when I had 3 and 4 jobs doing different things. I was pulling money from different places, but it all came together as enough to feed my kids and do whatever I had to do. So I'm hoping that there are people out there that will call in, because, you know, we're new on the block, as it were, and people are still learning that we're 2 women talking about different topics. And it takes time for people to know what we're doing. But the bottom line is, this is a very important topic, sabotage. We don't want to sabotage any part of our creativity. We don't want to sabotage any part of our love for humanity and for the world. We don't want to sabotage the beauty of that brain that can in some way come up with really beautiful, gorgeous answers. Well, we have to stop being negative, don't we?
Well, that too, and we'd also need to stop conforming.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well, don't you think conforming is being negative? I do this because I have to. I have to fit in. I have to do this. I can't think for myself. The rules are, but you know, there's so many of them. And I always felt that conforming meant copycatting everybody else. So we all walk around looking the same, eating the same, doing the same. You know, I must admit, since Walmart's conquered our town here, I could go and buy a pair of clothes, which I did recently, but I know when I put those on, I'm going to bump into a whole bunch of people wearing the same clothes. I don't mind, but I remember a day when it was, I can't wear this dress. I've already worn it once. I can't be seen in public in it twice. So what did that do? That fed into the sweatshops, sweatshops, get the right word, of people making more and more clothes for as fast as they can, so that every one of us in the West can dress differently every day of the, you know, well, we've gone past that. The Piscean age is gone. And so someone somewhere needs to start showing people their values, to appreciate them. You know, I always say when I go shopping or anything, and someone's done some, you know, put my food in a bag or something for me, I always say something like, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Because I really believe that we all need to be told that we're appreciated. And that way we wouldn't want to be a sacrificial lamb. Because that's all we're trying to do, is be appreciated.
Yeah. And I think that on that note, I don't know if you would agree with this, but we all have trouble trying to say I love you. Those three obnoxious little three words. I'm gonna say obnoxious because it is obnoxious when we don't know how to say it. Now, but by saying I appreciate you is so much more stronger than I love you.
I think so too, because what appreciate says, that really, to me, my way of interpreting it is, I am thinking, feeling, emotionally and mentally, the effort that they just used in front of me to make me feel more content with my shopping bag. Just I use that as an example. But I've done that for many years, because Spirit taught me to always appreciate it. And what goes around comes around. So if you appreciate other people, then they're going to appreciate you for what you're doing and helping, and so on and so forth. Until we learn to really share emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually through this next Aquarian age, we're still going to be using the old Piscean habits and routines, because that's what father did, that's what grandfather did, that's what mother and grandma did, and great grandma. We haven't forgotten yet. We have to forget.
Well, there's a listener in the chat right now who said, this is Mary. She said, for me, it's I'm sorry.
I understand that too, because, you know, over the years, we've seen so many patients and clients so it's supposed to be 20,000 documented in Japan, and my spirit guides told me over 30,000 in Europe and England before I even came to, you know, this country to work. So the bottom line is, we integrate, we mix with different people, and no two people have the same, they're similar, but not the same perceptions on how they're going to live their life and what they're going to do. And I can tell you very much that most of the people who give find it very hard to receive.
Yeah.
And those that receive cling, once they do get it, cling to it and hold on to it, because they think they may never get another one or something else. So they feel that if they share something, pass it on. You know, we have that saying that if you have a garage sale, you know, your rubbish is someone else's gold. Okay. That is really true, I believe. You know, I got a whole table set for my living room for $31. I'm so thrilled. You know, that someone else probably thought, oh, I hate this old table, you know, because it's not new. But that's how we have to be with people. We have to understand if they want to be a sacrificial lamb and go and work morning, noon, and night for us to feed us on our plate or whatever it is, because we're handicapped or incapable, to greet them home with a smile. Hi, I bet you're tired. Would you like me to make you a cup of tea? No, I just want to go to bed. Okay, I really appreciate your home and I really appreciate you went to work. Goes a long way. They mellow down. All right, maybe I'll have that cup of tea after all. You know, it's tact. It's knowing how to communicate. I think that's so important. And that's why Archangel Johanniel is here to share any views. He's with me. He always comes and goes when I'm talking now, because he wants people to really understand that we need to know the value of our words, not just throw them out, but to know what they mean and to use them wisely. Because, you know, for example, someone was saying the F word all the time around me when I was 14, 15, 16, somewhere around that age. And I even saw it written on a wall. And I had to eventually ask by the time I was 17, what's that mean? Of course, you know, I know what it means now. I won't have to say it because any children listening. But basically, there's a program on television that I've told you about where they were taking all the swear words and playing with them psychologically in good form and bad form. And it was laughable. But I'll tell you that most people take those words in insult, in pain, in anger, in suffering. So even if they're throwing it at someone else, right, trying to make that person anxious and worried or whatever and under their control, you actually can see in the person who's saying those words and being aggressive, you can see their fear. You can see they're fed up sacrificing themselves to someone or anyone, however their view is. And you can see their pain, you can see their suffering. I look at that a lot. So, you speechless now?
No, but yeah, but we get to that point because we don't know how to react to some things anymore. It's just that I know I've been in that situation over and over again. I get it's like a karmic cycle. It's abuse after abuse and well, exploitation, I should say, is a good word for it. Being exploited to the point where it's just like, okay, I'm done. I'm just, you know, and then you wonder why people get so bitter and so resentful and so angry about the world. They're just like, okay, well, I was going to shut the door now, but now we've made it's already known to be that when you sacrifice yourself, that you for the greater good or for whatever the circumstance or situation may be, that you become miserable yourself. Now you're making yourself even more miserable because you can't fulfill whatever the purpose that you have to feel because your perspective is not the same as the other person's.
Well, let's talk about mums for a minute, and you being one and me being an old mum. I remember, when I took my elder two to school, it's only a block away, so it wasn't a hardship for me, just walk them up around the corner and there they are in school. But I met other mothers, and it seemed to me back in those days that not one of the mothers was in a happy marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Included me. And every single woman that I talked to, because you got the part with the kids and, whatever, you socialize. There's one good thing about not working in those days, I had more time. Just talking with these women, their attitude was brought up from when they were babies themselves, because their mother was also a stay-at-home mother, that you had to do what the husband said. And if the husband came home drunk like mine, then you got beaten up. Well, mine didn't beat me up. He lied and cheated on me, but my first husband did beat me up. And, you know, those things are wounds that go so deep that they take away your sense of life. They take away your sense of self-esteem, worth, and value. And you feel like you're helpless and useless. And the only way that you can get peace of mind and be left alone is to do very nervously everything that that man wants you to do.
Yep.
Okay. Well, fast forward, we're not in those times anymore. And yet I go to countries to teach where I still see that going on. Just because, you know, and I've been downtown LA or different places over the years in countries, in this country, and it's still going on there. It's just hidden up more. But you know what I'm going to bring up, and I think it's very important. We have a big issue right now with our cultures and our colors. Okay, I'm not mentioning anyone in particular, but, and because I'm mentioned me, I'm white, I bet everybody's going, oh, she's going to do that. No, I'm not. I've never seen a color on people. I've seen auras. And I can tell you that I think whatever color your skin is has nothing to do with what's going on inside you as a spirit entity, as a person who's come here to learn something. So if you choose to focus on the dark side, the negativity of the way people are handling you, you'll get more and more of that negativity because it breeds more. You understand? Copycatting. But if you stand back or even remove yourself from that circumstances without fear and make yourself a new life and a new direction, which I had to do, then you begin to understand you have essence within you that is powerful, that can come up and support you and inspire you and motivate you to want to try new things. And that is key, I think, to the growth and evolution of mankind. We must evolve. And as you said, we look back through the years of ancient times to now, and we see the growth. But we don't stop and really appreciate. We know it, we take it for granted that we've grown and evolved. But what we don't do is look back at our mistakes. And we're still doing it. We're making the same mistakes over and over again, motivated by the Piscean age of greed. And that's why I brought this up with the Aquarian age, because it's going to take 150 years for the generations that have been born that come after the ones that are now being born years later, you know, new ways of being in this world. And, you know, as I mentioned in other shows, sound will become the main energy source. So that will be clean. At least we'll clean up the earth, and that'd be good for us. But are we cleaning up our minds? That's what we have to work on.
Well, this is the thing is that this is why I in so many shows I keep talking about the monkey mind, the monkey see, monkey do. We're so programmed, we're so conditioned to follow, you know, follow
someone else's creed that isn't our creed that messes up.
Yeah, and we do. So we're, I mean, I know that you and I, we have separately individual minds. Your perspective is very, very different to my perspective. Your world is different to my world. And yet we still find common ground. But there are so many other people out there that don't know what common ground is.
Yeah, well, in that sense, it depends on education, doesn't it? I mean, you know, let's be honest, the student has a choice to go to school because it's law here. Not every country, so a lot of them can't spell or read or write or whatever. But education comes in many forms. It's not just sitting in front of a teacher learning to read or write. I could be standing out there watching someone drive the car up the road and realize that they're driving too slowly or too fast. So where did I learn about speed of how a car should be traveling. Well, there's a signpost. I can read it. It says 20 miles an hour. Why are you doing 50? So there's question marks. We have to have that to question everything we see, hear, touch, and feel. So teachers are not necessarily teachers in school. It's just anywhere and everywhere. I was working with in the grocery store, and the girl was packing all my stuff into my big bags, and I said, thank you, I appreciate you and everything. And we got outside, and she was pushing all those carts, you know, along, and she's a big girl and heavy. And I said to her, well, you're getting a workout today. And she said, yeah. So I said, secret, press that button and let it take it in. You don't have to push it. Okay. And she looked at me and she said, oh, I forgot there was a button. So, you know, she's been working this place for years, and she's just been so used to pushing these trolleys in manually. She forgot there's a little motor that speeds them along. See, it's habit. That's my point here. She's a dear heart. I like her a lot. Sweet girl, a little bit slow too. So we have to make examples of that here so that people understand. But we all forget. I go in the other room and I think I came in here for something. What did I come in for? And I will not take old age for it. I stand there and go, I've got to focus more. And that's what we need to do. We need to focus on the actual living of life, to appreciate our own life. And then through our own experiences, we can start appreciating other people. You know, people who are rioting right now, they don't appreciate anyone. And do they really think that they're going to achieve anything? They're not. They're going to get bombarded with bullets and water and whatever, and die in the cause of it. Is that a sacrifice? What do you think?
No, they just want to make martyrs out of themselves, but at the same time, they're only hurting themselves, because what happens after these things? You are ridiculed because everyone's on social media. So when you start, you know, speaking out about your injustice, whatever that may be, good or bad, you then go through the fear of ridicule.
Well, a lot of people lead with their heart as well. We have to admit that. It's not everyone that leads with their mind all the time. So, you know, someone could come in and say, oh, my husband's like this. So this is a good example with that Stephen Van Coots, before he passed. I remember the first time we were in England, and there was a couple of men who come out of the bar and they're fighting. And Steve wants to go watch. And I said, come on, we got the kids with us. We can't do this now, you know. And he's like, no, I want to see what happens. Curiosity kills the cat, right? I had to literally drag him away. He would have stayed and watched the whole fight. And I asked him when we got home, why did you watch that? He said, well, I've never fought, you know, anybody. There was one boy that attacked me. So I wanted to see, I wanted to learn how to fight. I said, you're a bit old for that. You're 40 now, you know, but we laughed about it. But yeah, over the years after that, anything that was going on that one could identify with emotionally, he was going to watch. And it's the same with football, soccer, you know, the two of them. The men love it. They get together and cheer, and they say, oh, he should have kicked it this way, or he should have thrown it that way, or you should have done this. And then they have all these people afterwards analyzing the play these guys have done. Why don't they just sit there and go, what a game, fantastic. They entertained me for 2 hours, and I saw the thing that went on in the middle. And so we had a good time. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. Please do it again next year. Wouldn't that save us a lot of time? Then we can watch something more fun. Nothing so boring to me as hearing what a spectator thinks they should have done. We should ask them to get up and go kick the ball.
Yeah. I would pay someone to actually hear that, because they probably won't do it. They're more interested in that ridicule, that toxic masculinity, that, or call it what you will. Oh, well.
Well, women can do the same. I'm not going to take them out of the loop. But what I am saying is, Women will do it more with their emotional problems. We'll all sit here and run down and talk about whatever. But women do have a softer side where they come up with ideas and they birth them. Whereas men, you have to pull teeth to get them to just listen to the idea that they could change.
Yeah, but at the same time, too, toxic masculinity is not always associated with men, because women have a toxic masculinity.
It's true. Yeah, we're all male and female inside, aren't we?
Yeah, I didn't purposely come out and say toxic masculinity after a football game. Well, that does occur, and you're never going to hear someone say, I appreciate you for sitting there and watching me watch the sport with you. Congratulations, like your team won. And by the end of the day, you're going to be sitting there and you're like sit.
What? Well, I played football as a child, English soccer, as we called it then. It was football. And then I watched, I loved it. As long as I was playing a sport, I loved it. The minute I was a spectator, I'm bored. I'm not saying like sitting there going, oh, he didn't swing the racket right, or she didn't hit with the hockey stick properly. I did all the sports, by the way. I just like, well, if I'm not doing it, I want to do something else. I don't want to sit there and watch someone else. Now, I appreciate there are a lot of people who get off energy vicariously by watching sports, and that's why it's such a big money maker. But just stop and think, if all those sports people work for regular male, income like we do, it's enough to survive on, not billions of dollars and pass from sold backwards and forwards like a piece of jewelry. Okay, if they would see the amount of money that comes in through sports, just think where that could go to clean up the towns that are falling apart, where the people are living at one another's throats morning, noon and night because of different cultures and gangs and all that. Just imagine, some of the sports people have been fantastic going in amongst them and helping them, but it's only a few. But they don't have a lot of money either, because it's taken by the powers that be. If they could bring that money to those people in need instead, we would have a different consciousness in those people.
Yeah.
But right now they're angry. They're going to hit out. They're going to hurt anyone who gets in their way because they want to share their pain. And so by hurting someone else, hey, now you know how I feel.
But the other thing is too, is that we're now coming into a society that is actually talking a lot more about the feelings, that the vulnerabilities of life, the what we are going through. There are so many people out there, mothers, even children. Children are more coming out, expressing their emotion. I'm sad. I'm happy. I love you, or different things like that. Men and women who are adults, they're speaking out about their, whatever the case may be, injustices or their loves or their passions. But there's so many people out there that are sitting on the opposite side of the fence that really do.
Yeah, I even have one member of my family, my son, eldest, not talking to me, hasn't been talking to me for 4 years. To this day, I still don't know why he's upset with me. I know it's a bit of something to do with grandpa when he passed, because he looked after him. I'm not putting my washing in the cunt out in front of everyone. But we cannot understand the way people think. That's my point. And even though I'm a medium and I know my son very well, I sit quietly waiting for him to want to address it, open up, and be a part of whatever it is he wants. But until someone invites you in, and this is why I'm using my experience, until someone invites you in, you can't go banging on their head, as it were, on their front door and say, I'm here and I want to talk this out and I want to know what's going on, because all you're going to get is a definite no in some way, shape or form, because that's what people do. They protect themselves by shutting people out. And unless you're willing to put down your barrier and speak about what is going on in a calm way, so that people can understand what you're feeling and what your motivations are and why you're so frustrated and so on. I mean, you know, that whole thing about the gentleman that got murdered by the police, what was his name? Fraser. You know, it should never have happened. Is that right name? Did I get the right name?
George Floyd.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. Aggression in that moment, no matter whether they're at war with one another in a battlefield or whether they're downtown LA or wherever it is, fighting is man's nature. He's learned that through the Piscean age to carry a weapon. He's been trained to use it in a certain way, and he will use it without thinking, especially if he's got troubles at home, he's got troubles in the office with his boss or whatever it is. We all have button pushed by violence and anger. And when I see people who come up against someone like that, they immediately bow to the energy of that person because they're so pushy and strong, and they become the sacrificial lamb in a psychological way, timid, repressed, you know. And there's many women that were like that, but now we've got acceptance of marriages with gay people as well. And so I'm even now working with people to help people, male or female couples, who are having exactly the same problems as straight couples. Okay, because the issues are still the same of how do I communicate, how do I listen, how do I support, how do, and all the things you mentioned in the beginning. And I'm working my buns off for doing whatever, and I'm not appreciated. So we've come full circle back to what was in the ancient times to where we're at today. And I want to make a point here. So I will be a Buddhist monk who will go and sit on the sidewalk and pour petrol all over me and set myself on fire and say to people, life is valuable. That's a message I heard, which was done with one of those situations. And the people walked on by, didn't even say anything, didn't try to put him out, didn't do anything. Okay. Well, Tibet has suffered a lot. And all those areas out there have suffered a lot. So what is one more life gone? Vietnam. You know, what is one more life gone? So many of us died. We're living on spiders. You know, we here in the West are grumbling about our society. And I'm telling you, we do not realize and appreciate just how much we have. We take it for granted. If we buy something new, we use it until it's out of date. Next 3 months later, because it's technical, we'll have to buy another one. Okay. Oh, I'm going to the prom. I have to have the most expensive dress on in the rack because I want to make an impression on everyone. Hell, when I went to school, there was no prom. There was no dressing up, you know. And finally, I think they did let us have one dance. And the boys who came were from St. Paul's, which is famous London school, and I was in the famous Lady Margaret school. They were marched in by a teacher, sat in a line, and we're sat in the other line, and they had to get up courage to come and ask one of us to dance. That's how I grew up. Today, kids are 12, they're kissing, hugging, and they're, you know, romping around, they're doing whatever. And if there isn't stability at home, they're street kids. And on the street, they learn from elder street kids who are running guns and they're beating up groups and whatever. And so they learn to go down that pathway and be a street kid. That's got to stop, because while you're busy trying to survive on the street, all right, it might make you grow up and know life is hard. And I've seen many great people in later years who've been on the street, they told me they had, and survived it to end up being in a metaphysical situation where they're now doing that. but that's a very small number. It's like if you took 100%, they're probably 5% who actually find themselves. The rest beat themselves up throughout their life. They get married, they're trying to do things better. They beat up their wives, or the wives beat up their husband, or the kids are neglected, they're latchkey kids, not because they want to be, but because they have no choice but to sacrifice and work 4 jobs. So all these things that you started with, our society, in my opinion, is arse over backwards. We have to lay down new, good, solid foundation stones of education for anyone and everyone. When they made education, I think it was about 14 years old, it became compulsory in England to stay till 16, extra 2 years. Do you know what I heard out of the kids whose parents had left school at 12? 2 more years? How are we going to survive? We're waiting on him to leave school so that we can have more money coming in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what chances that child can, they didn't learn, they just messed around and half the time didn't turn up at school. And now here we are today, those street kids are doing the same. They're running away from education. Now, my last point, how do you teach? That's what's important. People teach with a book. Read chapter 3. Read the first paragraph. Josie, take over. Read the second paragraph. Tom, read the third. Hey, that's not reading. You know, one of the best things my father taught me was Rudyard Kipling. He read that like I was watching the movie. Voices, you know, the scar, the snake, you know, whatever it was, he acted it out. And I'm like enthralled sitting there like that. I can still remember even now. That's how children need to be taught. They need to have the visualization, the hearing of it, the sounds, the connotations of what's going to happen in the story. They're going to learn far more than sitting down learning about the corn laws that I mentioned last night on my other show. You know, who was president in the year 1050 or whatever it is. You know, history is interesting if you're learning about how the people lived. That's my opinion. But the minute you have to study history and politics, unless you're that way minded, boring. There's no humanness in it. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. But just like religion, though that history from centuries ago, you know, there's a lot of people that are trying to adapt it into modern times. Just can't do it. Too outdated.
No, well, I used to say there was enough history to last me a lifetime to study. And since that period when I was in school to now, so much has changed in this world. Can you imagine studying this period in history? Oh, and we've lived it and we don't remember half of it. Right? So the world has to change in some way, and the COVID has made it happen, whether we like it or not. It's kept us at home, and keeping us at home has made us think about ourselves, our value on life. We don't want to drop dead with the bug. So, hey, I've suddenly got purpose. I want to live longer. And what am I going to do with my life living longer? And, you know, maybe I should get a different job. Well, I'm not trained for anything else. But, hey, I can sit here in front of my computer now because it's all up on the computer and study at home much better. You know, so we've changed our perceptions on how we can learn. And you know, I'll let you talk about what your kiddies are going through. I think more important because I'm not dealing with young kids at the moment. Yeah. So how are your kids getting on now? They're back in school.
Oh, now that they're back in school, they're actually flourishing. 12 months of distance learning has been absolutely horrible. Not just on. I'm going to say me. Be a little selfish here and say me. Because me being the fact that I am a full-time businesswoman, I'm a full-time stay-at-home, I run a business from home. And so that's put a lot of pressure on me to perform, you know, my business duties and motherhood at the same time, trying to be a super mum, which is brother-in-law. It's not funny. But at the same time, when they gave me an opportunity to open up and put the kids back into school, you know, during the pandemic, you know, the pandemic is still very much on. And so I went, you know what? I'm going to put my kids back in. And it was like a catch-22. It's like, I need to, you know, having the kids out of my hair and not being around me is great, because now I've got more productivity in my business and doing the things that I do for a living. Then on top of that, by putting the kids back into school was an absolute bonus, you know, because that means that their academics could improve, their interpersonal skills with other people could improve, their social, you know, their social interaction. They're now able to run around outside like they, you know, not like they weren't doing it before, but more so than ever, able to get that sun that they desperately needed, instead of looking, we're all looking like vampires stuck in four walls, you know. And now I suddenly look back and I had this conversation with you, and it's like, okay, now I look at that catch-22 that I thought was a good thing. It still is a good thing, but now I get the kickbacks from that, because now I'm sitting here going, well, I can't do everything because my time is limited. I've got to get up early in the morning, got to take the kids to school, I've got to come back home, and then I've got to work, then I've got to go back to school, go pick them up, and then go back to work again, and then somehow fix dinner in between work. And
so are you being a sacrificial lamb?
I am literally sacrificing myself to function. So sometimes I'll get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Most of the times it's around 7. And I won't go to bed until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting my day in the morning and finishing in the morning.
So how do you feel about do you see it as, you know, you have to do it, or do you see it as you're more motivated and driven to achieve more goals and ambition?
Well, that I'm driven regardless. I'm motivated regardless. I know what I have to do, and I know the task at hand. So therefore, I'm going to go forth and do what I need to do. And so, because I know what the end result is in the completion of any project that I do. So I always set my mind to do and carry out whatever it is that is required at that particular time. But I also know that once exhaustion settles in, see, it didn't happen to me before. See, before I would be like, okay, yes, give me more work, give me this, give me that, I need more work. I had to find a sense of validation in order to get where I needed to be. But then when I sat back and I realized, oh, I'm already a successful woman. I'm already achieving. I'm already an original person that is unique in my own way. I am already doing what I already set out to do. Why can't that be enough? And so when I work really hard, because it's just me and my boys. And so, you know, it's now gotten to a point where, you know what? I do what I need to do, and I take a step back. I started for the very first time putting my foot down and saying, no, hell no. And I literally was like, hell no. You want to come to me and you give me a job? And I don't mind people giving me jobs. But there are certain people or certain jobs that are just like, okay, now I've got to place that priority, that value on whether or not it is something that I can pursue or comfortably pursue without affecting my well-being. Because there are times that I get up in the morning and I just don't feel like it. That's when I say to myself, okay, no, I'm not gonna get myself involved in it today. I'm gonna just sit down and do completely nothing, and just gonna relax and go to sleep, or read a book, or do something other than work. For me, I revolve my life about my family, so me and my boys, and my work. And so my work is heavily influenced in my life already, because obviously I'm a woman who does teach and preach by example.
And we have to realize that we need a lot of people, not so much to preach. I got a negative of preach, but teach the, everyone anywhere is able to learn something. It doesn't matter what your age is. You could be 99. My mother-in-law is 100 and she's still here and very acutely aware and loves to do reading and whatever, and that is important, that we feed new information into our beings, because it's the new information that stimulates us to, grow and evolve as individuals. So the more we can take in, the better we can be. And going back to my kids on the street, they're not having anyone teaching them anything other than what they pick up on the street. So they're missing out a great deal of how to socialize, how to integrate. And like you said, the children back in school, this is very important time for children to understand how to have a repartee, as it were, of dialogue going backwards and forwards, because the old teachers were like, okay, open the book at such and such, as I said before, nobody talk, silence all the way through. And then she might pick on a child, or he might pick on a child and say, okay, page such, what did you read? What does it mean to you? Sir, I don't know what to say because I've been told I mustn't talk. I saw that many, many times in my own children's, schooling. And now there was a new kind of schooling that came out, which I can't remember the name for it, but the children are allowed to choose a thing they want to study that day. And it was a small group of teachers and a small group of children. It went for about a year or so before it was published, and then homeschooling started after that. I never heard of homeschooling in England because we didn't have it. And I was only focused on that when my children were young. And, the idea was if you didn't take a child to school, then they would never learn. So it's compulsory. And I found out when I came to this country that there was still in the deep south some areas where there was no law about having to go to school. Most of the black children weren't going, and the poor whites weren't going, so they barely could read or write. And I was shocked because I found out there was no rule that said they had to go. They needed them to work. They needed to earn money on the field, like picking cotton or something. They still had the old Piscean ways. I am looking forward to the time when whatever anybody wants to do can be discussed amicably. Okay, let's take politics for a minute. I've seen arguments back and forth between whichever one you're belonging to, running people down, telling everyone stories and stuff on the news about what they've done, dragging up history of stuff, and they were 10, they're now 60 or 70 or something. Why do people want to destroy anyone that is trying to make us better, to lead us towards something better? Why? I can answer it. Because they're afraid of change. What do you think? Do you like change, or do you like the old stuff?
I'm flexible.
Okay.
And adaptable. That's just my personality. So I try and encourage that in other people, because because what that leads to is resiliency, and resiliency leads to change, to help not just personal change, but to change in the environment, in what the communities that we live in, and humanity at large.
So resilience is a good word to use versus doing a sacrificial thing, because when you're in a sacrificial mode, all you can think about is the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's saying, I'm doing this because I expect a bad end. Even if you're a soldier and you're trained, you have in the back of your mind, this could end badly. Okay. If you remember back in, you will be a baby, back in the 70s, I remember a lot of the people that I was meeting were basically so adamant in validating why they always did whatever and were fighting to keep it going, whatever it was. And to put it simply, it's like saying, I still cook my toast by the fire on a prog, and I'm sitting there going, well, why can't you adapt and just have a toaster, to use it as an example. Yeah, I get a lot of messages while I'm talking, as you know, and I was just feeling that the toast in itself is bread, which is the bread of life, which is our body, and heating up our body to action, to become motivated by the brain to grow and evolve. Why do we have to have someone come along and train us to stay the same and look like everyone else and do the same as everyone else? We can't be that way. We're all different and we all have inspirations and stuff to explore, but we can't do it if someone's going to put us down and tell us we're not good enough. And that's another thing about grades. In this country, everyone wants to get 4.0. Well, hi, meet me, 2.0. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are or not in school. It's what you do with it when you get out there in the world. I speak to a lot of Japanese, as you know, even last night while I was working with people for 4 hours. And the questions they ask are things like, how do I live with my family and why am I with them? Because they're all so bad and I hate them. So is there some past life that we're making amends for? Okay, well, hey, that is a question someone would have asked me in the 70s. Japan's behind us. We know that our ancestors' DNA, and we know we have choice of what we want to take out of that DNA, but we also know that we have talents and skills of our own that we can manifest and use. So I want to encourage people to get a creative, artistic talent that's your downtime to enjoy and recover from the stress and depression you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with curiosity. I mean, for me, I absorb knowledge like it's nothing. All of the education that I've had, it doesn't mean anything unless I'm doing it. It's something with it. It doesn't, just because I have titles, it doesn't mean anything either. Because tomorrow, who's to say that I won't wake up and be a mechanic?
You don't know, you see. When I think about my life and my journey, even with metaphysical studies, okay, I'm all in the same pathway from birth to now, and I'll die doing it. So that's my journey and that's my choice and I love it. But I've grown so much through the time. And as you grow, you change your point of view. To put it simply, it's like I'm looking at that lovely picture behind you with the earth and the sun just coming up, okay? Another day, I might be looking at, say, Mars. Now, why would I try and make the earth and Mars be twins? Everybody's doing that right now. We've lived on Mars and now we're going to live on Earth. Hey, maybe we'll live on Saturn next, who knows? But what I'm getting at is that why do we have to speculate beyond this Earth in terms of repairing our lives and our spirit and our soul? We're here on Earth. We're here to smooth out, shall we say, what was, and teach the younger children now to grow up knowing that they can actually make this world a better place to live in. No more wars. Can you imagine no more wars? Yeah. Can you imagine an international council who all come together, just like our Senate, but they come together and they have to find an agreement? The rule would be they cannot leave till they agree. There has to be rules to stop them. I'm better than you and I'm worse than you and whatever, it doesn't help to have, like the last president shut the whole Congress down. You can't have that kind of thing going on, nor can you have people bad mouthing. There should be a law against bad mouthing. You know, certain people have been elected and so on. If it was recent, like, you know, a couple of years or 2 or 3, fine. But why drag up something, as I mentioned earlier, that they did at 12 years old and they're now 60? You know, what do kids do? They always screw up. They always make mistakes. They always get wrong. There's many a woman, I bet, who's in the house now, who's had a baby out of wedlock or had an abortion or something. You know, there is always some history, and we need to realize that people learn by that history. And if they are able to discuss it and work with people, they won't become a sacrificial lamb, because they'll see the pathway and they'll see there's alternatives. The people who sacrifice, they don't see alternatives.
No, and not only that, a lot of people are still out looking for materialistic prestige and notoriety. So no matter which way they look at it, they're not going to look for whatever they're sacrificing, because again, you go down that path, you're already sacrificing yourself, your own self, for everything, all the repercussions that happen as a result of being materialistic and wanting that notoriety and
You know, I just wanted to pop in here because you jogged my memory of, there are a large number of children who are well off, their parents are well off, you know, whether they're, whatever they're doing, they're millionaires or billionaires, or they're just thousands of thousands coming in, whatever way you want to think about it. And these kids are bought a lot of things. Their parents come and go on their boats and yachts or planes or whatever they got. And they're used to being with a nanny and then someone else, a tutor at home or something. And that people say, oh, I envy all that. Well, those are the ones that are most lonely and most miserable. I can tell you, I've had a lot of very wealthy people come to me with their children and say, I can't do anything with them. No matter what we give them, they play up. No matter what we tell them, they play up. No matter where we go, they are always resentful and so on and so forth. Okay. And I have to explain to the parents that you're not, it sounds bad to say it this way, but you're not good parents. You're typical parents who believe that because you didn't have when you were young, or you've inherited what you did have when you were young, you're passing on your idea that you have to make your children the same. Okay, those children are more likely than the street kids actually to do something like commit suicide. They're really miserable. And they think that if they do something that, you know, will upset the apple cart in this financial world they live in, that they will stop it. And they end up actually in a lot of trouble. I've had to deal with quite a few of those children. But you don't hear about it because it doesn't make the news, because it's all hashed up, because family have the money. So this is why people go fishing when we get someone famous. You know, we want to find out if they're really, really as good as they say they are, that kind of thing. And then we had a breakthrough on that by a few actors and actresses who wrote their life stories admitting the abuse that went on. But what happened? Everybody argued about it and pushed it under the carpet. It's not till we're honest Joes or Josephines that we allow ourselves to be able to speak about whatever is coming down and not feel afraid of repercussions or think that we're an idiot or that we're incapable of standing for ourselves on our own 2 feet and doing something. Self-esteem, self-worth, self-value is vital if a child is going to understand how they can provide for self and for others without being a sacrificial lamb.
Well, I was just going to mention, there are 5 things that we all must have, or must sacrifice, I should say, to have a better future. And that is 1, time. Time is one of the most important resources that a person has in their lifetime.
Mhm.
And so if you want to become, you know, how you manage your time matters a lot, and people become what they do in their free time. If you want to become an artist, use that time to develop and master it. Whatever you want to be, utilize the time that you have now to reach the pinnacle of your life. Yeah.
And you must also realize that television eats up. I've been fudging in front of television a lot lately, but it eats up a lot of our time. But if you go to Discovery or you know, one of those programs, you can learn a lot about the world without even having to get out of your sofa. But the point is, ultimately, if you've got all that knowledge now about the earth and what it's like, what does it motivate you to do? Do you want to go up and join Greenpeace? Yeah, sitting on your sofa isn't going to change the world, learning about the world. So I really want to encourage people to go online, and like we're doing the classes. Well, we haven't started yet. I guess I should let you talk about that. And we're getting towards the end, aren't we? So, but yeah, I want to encourage children not just to be homeschooled, but to be encouraged to do the arts, like you say, and to watch stuff around the world that they would never get to see. But there has to be interaction on it, otherwise it's gone.
Well,
It's not important.
I was just going to mention the other 4 points that I had in terms, and you took the words right out of my mouth when you said
That must be psychic.
no, I'm kidding. No, basically, some of us get furious when someone says that you have to sacrifice your entertainment and media or your virtual screen space for, you know, you might be on virtual meetings or something like that for your betterment. I will never say that you have to sacrifice all of these. There are some priorities, and again, I'm going to use that keyword, priorities, in your life that leads to where you want to go in the moment. And somehow you have to limit them. Or you're going to get sidetracked. You're going to go, you know, get distraction. And so how you stay away from these things depends on your dedication and determination. And the more determined you and dedicated you are, the more you will stay away from them. And so if you're a bookworm, you're probably going to read bookworms rather than watch TV.
But we also need physical exercise. Add that.
I haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah, I'm giving it to you because I'm watching the time and I don't want us to run out. Sorry. Go on, shoot me.
The next one is friendships and relationships. I'm not going to say that you have to leave your loved or loved ones to find success in your life, but you're definitely defined by the company you keep. And so if you take a moment and have a look around at the company that you keep, if you're surrounded by people, friends, and relatives that support you, then you are somewhat half succeeded, but things will be worse if it is the other way around. You need to sacrifice those friends, relatives, and people who slow down you on your path to whatever glory may be for you. The next one is urges and desires. All of us have certain desires and urges which destroy us one way or another. For some, it may be porn addiction. For others, it may be alcohol addiction, smoking habits, obsessive habits. But I can talk about all the habits and urges and desires that we have in a lifetime. Desires are capable of both killing and making us. So it's important to stay away and resist those desires which hamper you. Instead, sticking to those little dreadful habits, cultivate those habits like reading, blogging, working out, traveling, anything that helps you on your journey for whatever your better future may be. The next one, which is what you were saying, is lifestyle. Our day-to-day choices and the way that we live also affects our lifestyle and affects our future and whatever that may be. Some of us are running all day and night to prove to others that we're better than others in the food that we eat, the car that we drive, the accessories that we use, the materials that we possess. But the reality is our future is the best proof that we could show others. And so you may have a obsession in crazy foods, trendy dresses, certain material things. If you want to have a better future, then you must provide more importance to your aim than to these material things, which is what I was talking about earlier about gaining material notoriety, and what was the other word? I forgot. Anyway, but yeah, basically step away from it because you don't really need it. You know, I have seen over the last 2 weeks, well, actually over the last week, I have seen 3 fires. People have just lost everything material to them, lost, house gone, don't know what they're going to do. These are young families. People have lost their jobs. The second fire that I saw was people lost their jobs. The third one was a business fire. They lost their livelihood.
Mm.
So, you know, by
Well, yeah, I'm going to interrupt you though for a minute. It's not just fire, it's earth, air, fire and water. All over the world is destroying people's lives, floods, you know, dams breaking, whatever it is. But I did want to interject, because we're running out of time, that what we have to think of is when these disasters happen, they're actually like some rains coming over us, like I'm thinking of a child when you used to put the old-fashioned reins and hold the child so it wouldn't run off into the road or something. You don't see them anymore now. But the bottom line is we get our house, we get our whatever, and we run with it, and we run with it, and we run with it. And we're in a routine, as you said, that's boring. We need disaster to break down that boring routine so that we wake up to there's an alternative. And this new age, the Aquarian age, is giving us an alternative, and we may not like the way it's come upon us through the virus and technology, but it is the way. And the sooner we all embrace it and do what is essential to teach as role models. You know, we're all role models, no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, we're all role models to one another. And so if we do the right thing, the kids are going to do the right thing. We're going to prepare these kids much faster. If on the other hand, we keep throwing tradition at them and the old history stuff, we're going to get them confused, just like we've been confused our entire lives. Yeah.
I was just going to finish up. You know, at the end of the day, you know, your lifestyle is your lifestyle, right? And so don't let these petty things take control over you. Maintain a healthy and worthy lifestyle, no matter how hard you try for what you want. And always remember this: your future self is watching you right now through memories. So don't make him or her regret on the wrong decisions that you take now. Your future is your future, and what you want to work and achieve in your life, sacrifice or not, you'll get there. But please don't conform.
That was a good statement. I hope they heard it. Repeat it again. No, the part I like the part about your memories in the future. Looking at you now, I like that. I'll have to re-listen to the program. So
Yeah, words of wisdom, sometimes like that. But for those who are listening, yeah, if I remember it, I will. Yeah, I'm gonna go listen to it and write it up. I'll put it up on social media for everybody if they if they did miss it. But what I will say is, for those who are listening tonight, because we are going to round up the show right about now, you can find us at multiple different places, social media included, all major social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. What else is there? Twitter.
All the social places, she's got them everywhere. when I'm talking, you know, you get cut out. That's why I hold back a lot, because we can't both talk at the same time.
That's okay. What I will say, you can find Soma Fusion Media up on YouTube, Soma Fusion, Mind, Body and Soul. All the shows will be put up there as well. Along with Margaret's radio show, you can find that at soundcloud.com/Dr. Margaret Speaks. You can also go over to the Samaras Center, that's center with an ER.com, to find all of Margaret's PR stuff, her articles, her books, all sorts of stuff over there. You can also go over to easypeasysolutions.org, where we will be. I encourage you all to go sign up over there and subscribe, so that we can notify you when we are holding live talks. And of course, you can also go over to the samaraseducationcenter.com for all of the courses that we're going to be doing. Again, go and subscribe over there, sign up, give us your email. If you need to make an inquiry, obviously email us. The Universal Christchurch, we have our ministerial courses over there. They will be launched very, very soon, so stay tuned. We've got more information, but I will be putting up a lot of information up on social media over the coming weeks anyway. We will be launching on, what day are we launching, Margaret?
Well, we said around my birthday, June the 24th, but until we get some, I mean, we'll be talking on the classes and we'll pitch it and share it, but we need people to show some interest in this. I know we've only been out 4 weeks now with this show, and it does take a lot of work on your part, which I appreciate. You know, I'm patiently waiting. I've had this dream in my lap my whole life, so it's not unusual, but our goal is to bring education on many issues and many topics. So we're going to start out with talks on easypeasysolutions.org, and roll over. If people are really interested and want to really learn, then we'll go to Samara's Education Center for that, so they can do courses and get qualifications and so on. So we're ambitious, but right now we need you. We need you to join us. Go sign up and put your name on there and what you're interested in, so that we can fix it and make it there for you to get what you want. So we need you.
Exactly. And if you need to contact us through social media, we are on social media. You can contact me any day of the week. You can even go to my website, so somafusionmedia.com and soma-fusion.com. You can even find Margaret's books up on somafusionmedia.com too, and we have plenty of them for you. What do we have here today? What am I going to do today? Here's one.
Oh, you know, it's funny you should bring that up, quantum entanglement. I've just been reading some of my channel things back from when, long ago, 1980s and stuff. And there it was, all about Einstein. And I hadn't even remembered I'd written that when I wrote that book. Channeled. Everything I write is channeled.
I love this book.
You do? I better read it.
I think I'm halfway through it. I have 17 books to read. Like, I can't read them all in one go.
No. But like I said, when you're a medium, you're channeling, you're just like a woman possessed, and you're just writing. And of course, while I'm writing it, I know it all and I understand it all and so on, but then I move on to the next book and I forget what's in the first book. So I need to go back and read my own books. But, you know, I like to read other people's books. So we'd like to hear about people who have books that are in a similar vein with us. We're also looking for teachers, aren't we?
Yes, we are. But not teachers that just like to talk, teachers that actually have credentials, have at least some sort of experience in teaching capacities in the topics that we actually talk. And we want these teachers to be able to formulate their own curriculum as well. When you're not just teaching, you may not be just participating or teaching what we teach, but you need to be able to formulate your own curriculum. That means that you have to show the ability to produce and write your own courses.
Absolutely. This is a golden opportunity for many of us who've been out there working and quietly and teaching on our own in different ways, to bring us all together and formulate a university online. And I'm open to ideas. You're open to ideas, right? We're open to help. We're open to investors to donate to us because we're under the banner of Universal Christchurch. And anything that anybody thinks of that I'm not even mentioning, we're open to it. we want help. We need help. It's a big dream.
Exactly. And with that said, again, for those who are listening to us right now, you can go to the websites that we just mentioned, samariseducationcenter.com, universalchristchurch.com, ecpcsolutions.org, or you can find out all the other shows that we do up on Soma Fusion Media at somafusionmedia.com too. And so with that said, we will be back next Saturday at 7 p.m. and we will be talking about, I'm going to tell you in about 2 seconds what we're going to be talking about. And of course, we'll be putting that up on social media for you by the end of this weekend anyway. And that topic is, come on, phone, work. My phone isn't working today. I wrote it down on my about relationship behaviors that lead to indifferences and toxicity. And so that'll be an interesting topic. We'll be talking about the differences between men and women and the way that we think and how its indifferences can lead to very toxic relationships.
And if you like that one, then we're planning on having a series of lectures on Sumaris about the different types of relationships, not just with family, but at work and socializing and so on. And that would lead into a course in counseling. So if you're interested in expanding your abilities, remember that we are able to give you certification, even diplomas if you really work and do full courses. So we're looking to give you a lot that you can have here.
Exactly.
And not at expensive prices like some people are doing.
Exactly. And you'll find out a lot more information when we start to put out a little promo for you. And of course, in the meantime, you can inquire, and our email address for inquiries is sumarisucc@gmail.com. That's sumarisucc@gmail.com. And with that said, we are going to bid you adieu. Adieu? Yeah, adieu. And we're going to wish you also a happy weekend. And we will see you at or 4 o'clock Pacific time.
Yes, that's right. Arizona doesn't actually change their time at all. So it's me that gets confused, especially when I go into Las Vegas. I'm rushing to get there, and then I find I'm still an hour earlier when the clocks are gone back. Yeah, but anyway, thank you for being with me today, Katie, once again. I think we do a good job, and I'm very pleased that people are watching it on Facebook or whatever. So thank you to everyone for following us and supporting us.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening.
We're out. And bye-bye. We're out. Bye.